close. Now to the national elections. The president signed a new executive order on election reform earlier this week. It requires proof of citizenship to register to vote. It bars non-citizens from donating to certain elections and requires states to turn over voter lists to Homeland Security and DOJ for review. So what possible legal hurdles could this new order face? Joining us now is David Levine, Senior Fellow and Adjunct Professor at the University of Maryland's Center for Democracy and Civic Engagement and George Mason University. David, welcome to the show. Let's go through this order now. The ACLU released a statement saying this order aims to upend U.S. elections and disenfranchise millions of eligible voters. This directive represents a significant overreach of executive power and poses a direct threat to the fundamental right to vote, end quote. So David, does the president have power through executive order to require proof of citizenship for voter registration when election procedures are handled by individual states and not the federal government?
I think that's a really good question, and I would say a few things. First, the president seeks to have the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, an independent bipartisan agency, make a series of changes, and the Election Assistance Commission, derives its power from the Help America Vote Act, which, of course, was passed by Congress. With regards to voting rights and proof of citizenship, it's quite clear that attestation of citizenship is all that's required, and that's required by the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, another law that was passed by Congress. And so, there is a number of questions in this executive order about where the president thinks he's getting his authority from. Congress makes the laws. The president's supposed to effectuate them. Courts are supposed to interpret them. And the executive order really raises questions, with regards to separation of powers. Additionally, there are a number of things in this executive order that raise questions about the role of states. Elections have traditionally been a decentralized process. This executive order mandates that all ballots be returned on a single day, and that's on the basis of one dubiously written Fifth Circuit Court opinion. And quite frankly, states, for good reason, for a long time have been able to determine when they are allowed to have ballots returned to them by.
A moment ago, you alluded to that law that was passed in 1996. It makes it illegal for non-citizens to vote. They face up to a year in prison. They could even be deported. How do you see this law being used to argue for or against this order, David?
I think that the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, of course, was interestingly a law that was put in place to try and make it easier to be able to access the ballot. And so there's obviously a certain irony there. But, moreover, documented studies from organizations on the left and right have shown that, voter citizenship fraud is a vanishingly rare issue, and that voters who try and attest that they are citizens when, in fact, they're not, are creating a paper trail that, as you just showed in your demographic, not only won't affect the impact or outcome of the election, could very likely lead to significant criminal penalties up to and including potentially deportation.
You mentioned voter fraud is a rare instance. There's a survey I want to share with our viewers. It's of the 2016 election. It found that out of 24 million votes, only 30% were potential cases of non-citizens attempting to vote. How do you see the courts rule when they're presented data just like this?
I think for the courts, I think it's important that they look, and consider evidence as they look to interpret, relevant federal laws, relevant potentially executive orders, and any other legal sources. And what we've seen is that when you don't have many instances of fraud, like in this particular instance, then there's additional scrutiny that you can be subject to. Kansas, of course, had a proof of citizenship law a while back. That law ultimately was overturned in part because there was very little citizenship fraud going on. And so I think it's really important that as these legal challenges are heard, that people are aware of what the facts are on the ground. And the facts on the ground are clear. Citizenship fraud, voter citizenship fraud is very rare. That doesn't mean there can't be laws put in place to try and deal with that, but that is the jurisdiction of Congress, no one else.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.